Hey, welcome back to Through Nikki's Lens. I am Nikki and I'm here with another video for you today. It has been so long. It feels so good to be back. Happy New Year to you, and I wish you all the very best for 2025, especially when it comes to your immigration journey. I want to talk to you about proof of funds. So I received questions from someone that has been supporting my channel, and she had some questions about proof of funds, and I just wanted to clarify what proof of funds technically is and who needs to show proof of funds, whether it is that you're applying through express entry or through a provincial nomination program. And specifically the provincial nomination program, when it comes to applying for the PR after you've been nominated by a province, you're applying for PR through the PR portal. So I will go more in depth as the video progresses to explain what it is that the proof of requirements, funds requirements are for express entry, the PNP program, as well as to talk a little bit about BC PNP, since that's the nomination, the program that I know about. I'm living in British Columbia, and this was one of the avenues that my family and I utilized to become permanent residents of Canada. Proof of funds through express entry. So what we will discuss briefly are who needs proof of funds, how much money you need, and what does IRCC accept as proof of funds. So simply, who needs proof of funds are persons who qualify only for the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the Federal Skilled Trades Program. Just in a nutshell, once you qualify for Canadian Experience class, you are not required to show proof of funds. Canadian Experience class, to qualify for that program, you need to have work experience in Canada in a high skill job, generally that's NOC or tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, and you have at least 1 year of work experience. It could be full-time or part-time equivalent work experience in Canada. So proof of funds is how you show to IRCC that you have enough money to settle in Canada, and if you are invited to apply, you must give written proof that you have the money. Who doesn't need proof of funds? And this would be the Canadian Experience class, or if you're authorized to work in Canada and have a valid job offer, even if you apply under the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the Federal Skills Trade. And the valid job offer is something that you need to look into a little bit more. So you can explore this section of the information, and it also says that the system may find that you're eligible for more than one program. You don't always know ahead of time which program you'll be invited under, and the system currently asks all applicants to provide proof of funds document. If you don't need to provide proof of funds, you must upload a letter explaining either that you have been invited to apply under the Canadian Experience class, or that you have a valid job offer and authorization to work in Canada. So keep those things in mind. How much money do you need? And this is based on the number of persons within your family, and the table outlines the minimum amount. So that means you need to have more than this amount in your account. And when you're creating your express entry profile, you can't, and it's not recommended to put these exact figures. You need to indicate more and have more money, liquid funds that you can actually access. So for one person, you need $14,690
$38 Canadian, and this is as of June 3rd, 2024. For 2 people, $18,288. 3 people, $22,483. Just to skip ahead, for 7 people, $38,875. And this note says that for each person above 7, you need an additional $3,958. And it shows how to calculate the size of your family. And to calculate the size of your family, you need to include yourself, your spouse or common law partner, your dependent children, and your spouse and common law partner's dependent children. You must include your spouse or common law partner and dependent children, even if they are Canadian citizens or permanent residents, or not coming to Canada with you. So I'm recommending that you go through this information and you understand exactly how you need to show that proof of funds and how much money you need. What does Canada or IRCC accept as proof of funds? The funds must be available to you when you apply, as well as when they issue your permanent resident visa, or if they approve your application. And you need to have this proof to show that at least you had this money in your account or whatever for, I would recommend maybe 6 months prior to creating your express entry profile. So you need a bank letter, and it outlines what the information in the bank letter should have. You must have legal access to the funds. You can't use equity or real property as proof of funds. You can't borrow this money from another person. If you have funds in a joint account, they outline what you need to prove that you have access, and so forth. So just for you to understand, this information was updated on IRCC's website, or updates were made to this in December 17th, 2024. So you can explore this a little bit more to have a greater understanding of the proof of funds requirements through express entry. So we're moving on now to the application for permanent residence, and that's the PNP class. And just so you are aware, and this is a little bit situational then in relation to proof of funds through the Provincial nomination program. And there's not a lot of information that IRCC provides on proof of funds. It just says here that funds required to settle in Canada. The Government of Canada provides no financial support to new immigrants. You must prove that you have enough money, unencumbered by debts or obligations, to support yourself and your family members after you arrive in Canada. We strongly recommend that you research the cost of living in the region of Canada where you intend to live. Bring with you as much money as possible to make your establishment in Canada easier. And this part, in terms of disclosure of funds, is specifically for persons that are outside of Canada applying through the Provincial nomination program, and you intend to come into Canada. So if you arrive in Canada with an amount greater or equal to 10,000 Canadian or equivalent in foreign currency, you must tell this to the CBSA, that's the Canada Border Services Agency officer, and these funds must be in the form of cash, securities in bearer form, that's stocks, bonds, debentures, treasury bills, or bank drafts, checks, travelers' checks, or money orders. Failure to disclose the funds can result in fines and imprisonment. So this is where I would say things are not very clear, because when you see that persons who intend to settle in Canada, it does not really specify or highlight those that are already inside of Canada. You are a temporary resident because either you came to Canada as a student, or you came to Canada as a worker, or came to Canada as a student and then you begin to work in Canada. What do you do in that instance? For persons who are not aware, the Provincial Nomination Program includes so when you think of people who have been in Canada before, and the information on the website did talk about newcomers to Canada. The government does not support newcomers to Canada or support new immigrants. What does that mean? To me, it's a little bit ambiguous. So persons would say or argue, I've already been in Canada, I've been working, I've been supporting myself and my family before. Why do I need to show proof of funds? And as far as I'm aware, with the provincial nomination program, that is, you have been nominated by a province and you are going to apply for PR, and you're using then the non-express entry route. As far as I'm told, I know persons who have utilized that portal before. I have friends who have gone through submitted applications, and they disclose that IRCC does not request specifically proof of funds, but if you are applying for PR, it is always good, even if you don't have all the money, and that's for persons who are already in Canada. If you don't have all the money to show as proof of funds, then, and it's different from express entry that they outline how much money you need to show for how many persons you have in your family and yourself. The Provincial Nomination Program, or PR, through the non-express entry program does not highlight that fact, right? So what I would say to anyone, if you're applying through that means, show any amount that you have in your account at the time, show that as proof of funds, show that you are employed, show that you have pay stubs, that you have filed your taxes before. And one important bit to note is the fact that the provincial nomination program, whatever province you got a nomination from, initially you would have to satisfy them that you can support yourself financially. Most of the programs require that you actually have a job offer. So, and you meet a minimum requirement, a funds requirement that says, this is the amount that I make annually or will be making annually. And based on the province, they would say, okay, based on that amount that you're making, you will be able to afford to live in this province. So be guided by that.
Let us talk a little bit about the BC PNP program in relation to what persons can consider proof of funds. So what BC PNP does is to ensure that you meet a minimum threshold that ensures that you, whatever region you live in, that you can comfortably settle in that province. So your annual salary in relation to your job offer or the job that you're working in must meet that minimum threshold. So just a bit of information. So I'm in the BC PNP program guide, and I am on page 23, and this might be an old version of the guide. Since January 7th, they indicated that they would be providing more details in terms of the international graduate stream and or the streams for students that studied in Canada. So I'm not sure if this guide is updated. I downloaded this last week, and it says the table below outlines the minimum income requirements for your family size and area of residence in BC. Your spouse or common law partner and dependent children are included in your family size, whether or not they come with you to live in BC. If you are separated or divorced, your spouse will be included in the size of your family unless you provide a signed statutory declaration of your official separation, a divorce certificate, or an equivalent official document indicating the relationship has ended. So, family income threshold by area of residence. And it outlines, this is Metro Vancouver Regional District, and also the table has that threshold for the rest of BC. So in relation to one person in the family, if you're in the Metro Vancouver Regional District, your minimum annual salary must be at least $29,380. And if you're living in the rest of BC, which is generally cheaper than the Metro Vancouver Regional District areas, it would be $24,486. I'll include a screenshot of this table so that you can see exactly what the details are. For two persons in the Metro Vancouver Regional District, you need $36,576. For the rest of BC, $30,482. And it goes up to 7 or more persons. If there are 7 or more persons in the family, for the Metro Vancouver Regional District, you need at least $77,551, or for the rest of BC, $64,798. For the purpose of calculating family size, dependents who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents are not included in calculation. And this is a little bit different from the express entry calculation. So as far as I know, if you have a spouse, both of you are working, you're submitting an application through BC PNP. In that application, they will ask you, once you are invited to apply and you're applying for the nomination from the province, you will be asked for information for your spouse. So if you're married or in a common law relationship, you can include your spouse's details, including their job offer or an offer indicating that they're working in Canada, or I guess in instances when they're not in Canada, you can show whatever. If they're working, you can show their annual salary and so forth. A letter from their employer would be good to show their actual current salary, and I believe that can help in terms of meeting the family threshold if it is that your salary alone does not suffice. Just to explain our experience, so we got PR through my husband as the principal applicant. I have videos explaining this bit, giving our PR journey story, and also another video that explained how I almost got a rejection, or could have gotten a rejection for my BC PNP nomination. So the essence is that my husband was the principal applicant for our permanent residence application. We got a nomination from BC, well, he got a nomination from BC through the PNP Tech program. And in express entry, we use the express entry option. So we created an express entry profile before, and he was working in Canada. For a few months after I started studying, he joined me in Canada along with my son, and he was working for a while. By the time we were thinking of applying for express entry, he already had 1 year of high skilled work experience in Canada. So he qualified for the Canadian Experience Class Federal Skilled Worker Program. Once we got the nomination from BC, he also would have qualified for the Provincial nomination program. And just to explain a bit, That was actually the program that he got his nomination under. And we were a little bit concerned because at the time, the information on IRCC's website stated that once you qualify for Canadian Experience class, that was the only program at that time. That was back in 2022 when we created the profile. It stated that once you qualify for Canadian Experience class, you don't need to show proof of funds. And this was generally, obviously, for people who were already living in Canada. So the question would be like, what happens if you don't have enough work experience and you qualify for federal skilled worker or federal skills trade program, and you're living here already? Do you need to show proof of funds? The answer is yes, but there are circumstances that can probably technically exempt you from having to show the proof of funds. In an instance for the provincial nomination program, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but just to give you an idea, that information updated on IRCC's website. I don't know when this change was made, but as I said at the time, we were looking into applying through express entry. Only people with CEC were not required to show proof of funds. But the information that I saw this morning, and I think the web page was updated on the 17th of December 2024. If you have a valid job offer in Canada as well, so either CEC or you have a valid job offer and there are other things that you need to look into, you also do not need to show proof of funds. And this is either if you qualify under Federal Skills Trades Program or Federal Skilled Worker Program. So dive into the information. I'll leave the link to that webpage, IRCC's official webpage, in the description box. So let me just stick to our situation. So when we saw the information, we were a little bit, I would say, disheartened because of the fact that the nomination came under the provincial nomination program. Once you're nominated by a province, you have an express entry profile and you link those to your provincial nomination application. You automatically get 600 additional points once you get nominated from a province in Canada. We got that additional 600 points. That's my husband's express entry profile. So he was invited to apply for PR under the PNP program. So that was a red flag for us because we are thinking, oh no, what are we going to do? We may have to just reject the nomination, not submit the PR application, because technically from the information on the website, we did not qualify. At the time, and I still do, I'm following an immigration lawyer in Canada. He's Canadian. And he has always been sharing information only if you qualify and are nominated under or you get an invitation to apply rather, under the CEC program, you don't have to show proof of funds. Otherwise, you have to. We were very disheartened, as I said. We were worried and frantically asking persons we know that got PR before, what did you do? Obviously, others' situations would be different, but I have a friend who indicated that she has a friend that applied through PNP, got a nomination from a province, applied for PR, and was successful. I wanted to know, obviously, what did they do since they didn't have to show proof of funds? It was explained to me, and I said, okay, let's go ahead and see what's best. I also consulted with that immigration lawyer. That was the point of bringing up that I follow an immigration lawyer. I did a consultation with him just to be sure what our options were. And that communication with his office, we got clarification that since his nomination, and we had to submit the nomination certificate, and they reviewed it and let us know, okay, since he qualifies for CEC, as well as the fact that his program for the nomination was an in-demand occupation in BC, that we didn't have to show proof of funds to IRCC, and that was a big weight lifted off our shoulders. So what we had to do was to write a letter of explanation to IRCC explaining that my husband also qualified for Canadian Experience class, and although he did not get the invitation to apply for PR through Express Entry under that program, we don't have to show proof of funds. We did not have to show the proof of funds amounts that were listed at the time for, or that was listed at the time for 3 people within a family to IRCC. What we did show were funds we had in our separate accounts and in joint accounts at the time, or a joint account at the time of funds we had. So we did a total calculation. We got printed documents from the bank as outlined on IRCC's website, what the details on the letter should have, or the document should have. We wrote that letter of explanation, my husband signed it, and we uploaded that, and we got our PR approved. So what I will encourage you to do, it's not clear cut when you look at the information on IRCC's website. Your situation might be different, as well as if you are applying for PR through, you got a provincial nomination, you're applying for PR through the PR portal, that's the non-express entry PR portal. As far as I know, you do not need to show proof of funds. There's not a mandatory document indicating that you need to show proof of funds. However, what I will, and I think makes sense, what I will encourage you to do as well is to show any proof of funds that you have in your bank account. Show, if you can, pay stubs. Obviously, you would have given to the province whatever proof that you needed to show how much money you're earning, whatever they asked you for. So that would have technically satisfied the requirements for showing proof of funds. But to go a step further, and now I'm hearing that because of the immigration issues, the political issues in Canada, the officers might not be as lenient as they would normally. So they're sending back to ask people for additional documents. To potentially prevent them from asking you for documents for proof of funds, you may show proof of your T4 if it is that you filed taxes in the previous year in Canada. You can show pay stubs. Just be mindful not to share too much information, too many documents, especially when they didn't ask you for them. You can show that statement from your bank, stamped or signed, whatever the case is, to show that you actually have money. Show a letter of employment as well to indicate what your annual salary is. If you have a spouse, let them get documents from their employer as well. That's just being proactive then, giving IRCC as much information as possible. I believe in general, those are important things to note, aside from the details that either I may put them in before you see this part of the video or after, that gives information about the funds requirements for express entry as well as the provincial nomination program. And I go a little bit into BC PNP and what the funds requirement thresholds are, depending on the number of people in your family and where in BC you live. But I hope that you have clarity. You do your own research on what the funds requirements are. If you need to show proof of funds, what documentation you need to provide. If you need to just show a letter of explanation to IRCC to explain that because your you qualify for CEC or you have a valid job offer. Whatever a valid job offer means, you need to look more into that. You can show you meet the requirements. Say, hey, according to your policies or information on your website, all I need to do is to show that I meet those requirements and I don't need to show proof of funds. Or if you do need to show proof of funds, you show the accepted documentation. Show that the funds are liquid, that you have access to them, that you're not borrowing the funds from somebody else, and you should be good. I want to thank you so much for making it through Nikki's lens, and I'll see you in my next video.